The Sisters of Dorley by Alyson Greaves. Read by Robin Nolan. Chapter 15, Simply Irresistible. Content warnings for this chapter, references to abuse, assault, and death. 1988, July 30th, Saturday. It's a dangerous thrill being outside, and still rather a novelty, and she can't keep doing this forever. They fixed the rusted lock on the conservatory door, and 2 weeks ago they finally replaced the loose pane in the front hallway. Today she took the back route, slipping out of the window halfway up the rear stairs before dropping onto the water tank. And while she doesn't think anyone saw her, it's very nearly the last escape route she has left, and everyone has an expiry date. Better make tonight count then. At least it gets easier every time. When she first struck out on her own, months ago now, she was so scared she could barely meet the gaze of the girl behind the bar in the student union and had to keep looking away, hiding her face with her fingers. In her case, her recent past was somehow obvious, written on her skin. And it is, in burns and scars and in the very shape of her. But she dresses to hide the obvious marks, and for the rest of it, she thinks she looks more or less like a girl, enough to pass. Enough to start learning to get by with smiles and nods and bashful looks. Enough that when she ties up her hair and exposes her slender neck, she's treated like something beautiful. Of such experiences, a facsimile of confidence is born. It's her 9th time out of the house, and she's a seasoned explorer now. She smiles at a couple of girls, and they greet her in kind, easing the extant remnants of her anxiety. It's exciting to be normal. And it's all good practice for the day she finally follows through on the promises she makes herself, takes up the handful of stolen coins and paper money she's hidden away, and leaves, never to return. A light breeze picks up as she passes out the old chemistry building, and she laughs, wants to dance with the wind, and so she does. She skips, spins, lets it billow out her sleeves and play with her hair, and when the brief bursts of energy are granted her fade, she leans for a moment against the wall, breathes it in, fills herself with it, relishes it, delights in the grassy odor it's picked up from the mown college green and the damp edge that skimmed off the lake. It feels alive. Nothing like the perfume-clogged haze of the dining hall, which primes her for humiliation and degradation and cigarettes stubbed out on her back. Nothing like the stale and bitter air of the bedrooms, which invades her dreams and tastes of uncountable nights spent underground, carrying in its stolid grip the bloody remnants of every wound inflicted upon her. She's supposed to be serving drinks tonight, waiting on those old bitches and trying not to choke on their stink, accepting from them without any complaint any vice they might choose to indulge in her body. But the last time she got out, she found a flyer and for the whole week she's thought about nothing but the party by the lake. Music, dancing, girls drink for free. She's not invited, she's not a student, she's not even a woman. But for one evening she can play at being all three, for a while. The lakeside promenade doesn't belong to the university and doesn't share its character. It reminds her instead of the places she grew up, all of which came into her life aged and shabby and growing more decrepit every year. Bricks crumbling dusty into the weeds over the edge of a childhood playground. Iron posts driven into cobblestone and strung together with a chain follow the riverbank to an overgrown car park and a squat little building. Remnant of a gentleman's club that's been closed down in the early 70s and which these days is held together more by dirt than mortar. It is, by virtue of being the last plot of land in the area that hasn't been lavished with money and inflicted with architecture, undeniably the coolest place around. Music and raised voices drift over towards her as she descends. Someone's rigged up a gadget that broadcasts a signal from a tape deck out through a portable radio, and she passes a car as she enters the promenade, tuned in and bellowing through its open doors a song she doesn't recognize. Dotted here and there are other cars. Between them they surround the makeshift dance floor with music. There's a bar set up against the outside wall of the gentleman's club, and she pushes through a throng of drinkers to get there, borrowing the swagger and confidence she's seen in the best of the real girls, and waves to catch the attention of one of the men handing out bottles. So many people. She wanted to wear a dress for this, but the box of scavenged outfits they spent the last year carefully assembling had none that fit. She wanted to wear a dress for this, but the box of scavenged outfits they spent the last year carefully assembling had none that fit. So she's doing her best in a denim skirt and a cream top with loose sleeves and a scoop neck that sits wide on her shoulders and makes her breasts look fantastic. That's what Val used to say, anyway, in the moments they stole together. If only she could see her now. So many men. Back at the house, they regularly throw her at men that she's tried to enjoy it. She really has. She's gotten pretty good at faking it, but here, where her choice actually matters, she turns away 3 guys in the first 10 minutes and stops disguising her irritation after the second one. All she wants is to have a drink and listen to music and pretend like she's someone she's explicitly forbidden from becoming. How is that hard to understand? So when a 4th guy comes strolling up, she's ready to yell at him, take out the last 4 years on him, but before she can, a girl, looking over with a ready-made sneer, takes the sleeve of his shirt between 2 delicate fingers and tells him in no uncertain terms to piss off. He protests. She's not interested, mate, the girl says, making shooing motions. He leaves them alone, and she smiles, nervous. I'm right, though, aren't I? The girl says, turning back to her. You weren't interested, yeah? She shakes her head. Good, right. I'm Anita. Anita presents a brusque hand. Call me Annie, though. Everyone does. She swallows, tenses up her throat, and hopes like hell that Val's illicit midnight voice lessons aren't about to let her down. Hi, Annie, she says, and takes the girl's hand. Annie cocks her head, waiting, grinning. Isn't this the part where you introduce yourself? Usually, but you're not going to, are you? I shouldn't, she says. There's no way to tell Annie that she's only one name, and it ceased to describe her long ago, and that she hasn't the courage yet to choose something new. Ha! A girl with a bit of mystery to her. Fantastic. They're still holding hands, and Annie does something that causes her to lose her grip, then grabs her by the wrist instead. It's better to pull her away from the ineffective hiding spot. She tenses, almost tries to shake her off, but all Annie wants to do is drag her out into the promenade. She follows, reveling in the thrill of granting consent, of not fighting the hand on her. Annie turns halfway, walks backwards, looks her up and down with the same half smile that makes her chest tight, and then laughs as the song ends and a new track thumps against the cobblestones. I love this one, Annie shouts, releasing her hands and toasting her with a beer, her lips playfully lingering around the rim of the bottle. It's so cheesy. I don't know it, she admits. She doesn't know anything much. It's Robert Palmer. It's new. She shrugs, laughing, drains her own beer to the line she's anything but typical, discarding the bottle on the grass at the edge of the promenade, and she skips back to Annie, who greets her with a wicked grin and a hand on her skirt. Simply Irresistible, the song goes, and she takes the cue, leaning in for the kiss that Annie is obviously inviting, and Annie reciprocates, pressing soft against her, nipping lightly at her lip. A group of onlooking men whoop and whistle at them, probably thinking it's a show meant for them, but Annie's tongue is in her mouth. Annie's hand is on her hip, and Annie's low moans confirm to her that it's anything but. It's the first kiss she's chosen in her life. The lyric, she's so fine, there's no telling where the money went, makes her laugh. Makes her giggle hysterically against Annie's lips, because if there's one thing that's been made explicit to her, it's exactly where the money went. When she woke up, almost 2 years ago, in pain from all corners of her body, with dressings cocooning her face. They told her she was beautiful, and they made sure she understood just how much her beauty costs, what each part of her altered body is worth, and how much each donor had contributed. And where once that knowledge made her feel like a possession, she now throws it into the wind with the glee of someone who is, for tonight, free. 2019, November 9th, Saturday. When someone's washing out, they lock all the doors that connect to the cells and they keep it dark. It's tradition, and like many traditions, its origins are a little stupid. 15 years ago, when she was still finding her way, still writing the new rules, a fuse blew on the night of their first failure, blacking out the whole cell wing. And you have to honor traditions in a place like this, no matter how silly, or you'll eventually lose your mind. These days, they leave one light on for the condemned man. The cell wing is completely different now, minimally comfortable with a bed and a toilet in each room, and the girls have been instructed, in all cases but the most severe, to escort the residents to the bathroom every 2 or 3 days to shower. It was rebuilt along with the rest of the underground, a process that took years and required some complicated juggling to keep it operating along with the disruption. But every ounce of effort expended to wipe grandmother's scars from the walls of this place was worth it. She might have done it with her nails, gouged them into illegibility herself if it would have helped. Years since have changed the place as much again. The walls have new marks now, new scars, new relics from a new regime that is, she hopes, only cruel when it has to be. The shudder of glass reminds her why she's here, and she quickens her step, comes face to face with Declan, leaning against the door of his cell, kicking it idly, illuminated ugly by the single light. "Who the fuck are you?" he says. "I'm here to tell you how it ends," she says. 2004, August 8, Sunday. It's difficult, coming back, walking amongst these buildings again, assaulted by memories. But she's older now, more experienced, less easily shaken, and she came in via the new entrance by the lake, one that leads through the parts of the university that had changed the most, one that backs onto the new lecture theatre complex that the students nicknamed the Anthill, one that was built over the demolished remnants of an old gentleman's club and a decaying promenade where she once kissed a beautiful girl. Like all good things back then, it didn't last. Her sponsor caught up with her in the end. Frankie, short for Francis or Francesca or something, she doesn't actually know. And the one time she asked, she got a ringed fist in her mouth for her impertinence. Yanked her out of Anita's arms just as the evening was winding down and dragged her away to the edge of the promenade, forcing her to wave Anita away. Act as if Frankie was just a friend saying hi and not someone likely to lock her underground for a month to teach her a lesson. "David, such a surprise to see you away from home." "That's not my name." "Funny, because I've got your birth certificate. You know what it says on it?" "What do you want?" Frankie leaned in, imitated with impish glee the closeness she'd been enjoying with Annie just moments before, and whispered, "To remind you of what you are, of course." "And what am I?" "You're mine, David. Mine until I say otherwise." I could scream, she hissed back, full of foolish defiance, but tired of being touched and used and claimed and never getting to have a body or a moment that was truly her own. Could shout out for Annie to save me from the pervert molesting me. "Oh, David," Frankie whispered. "David, David, David." Frankie's hands tightened around her hips, fingers digging in. "You don't want to do that, because if you do, I'll pull down your skirt and show them all, including Annie, which of us is the pervert and which is the innocent girl." They could have bulldozed the place twice and it wouldn't have been enough. She takes her time walking the university grounds, calming herself. She's dressed as she prefers these days. Loose trousers, a light jacket over a cami, low heels, hair up, subtle makeup. When she left, she had to learn how to dress, style her hair, and make herself up almost from scratch, like a teenager would. It was hard and humiliating in its own way. She walks with real confidence now. Of all the things she had to learn, later in her life than most, that was by far the hardest. But she's still a little shaken by the approach to Dorley Hall. It's insultingly unchanged. Wearing the years had nothing more than a couple of extra vines, a handful of cracked flagstones, and a double glazing in the entryway. It remains 6 stories of brick monstrosity, mostly empty, a fake finishing school within a school, an aristocratic wart upon an already unpleasantly upper-class university. It backs onto the forest and wears the tree cover like a cloak, under which it hides its worst excesses. The entryway is held open, a concession to the August heat, and she strides up the steps carefully, and she doesn't look down, doesn't let her eyes stray to the spot in the corner where she and Val hugged on Val's last night, gripping each other with the fear and rapture of those who will never meet again. Grief never quite fades. It lingers in the spaces in which it was first forged, and she can't afford today of all days to be weak. She dismisses the memory, dismisses them all. All she needs is the hatred. Deep breath. The kitchen doors slam open in front of her, and a pleasure she thinks she will never forget blooms in her belly when, toast slipping from hands and glasses spilling their contents across the table, grandmother and her assorted cronies look up and face the beginning of the end of the easy lives they've enjoyed. Frankie, at the far end of the table, contorts her face with familiar disgust. Grandmother recovers first. "David," she says, gathering all her wizened bonhomie, "where have you been?" The name doesn't hurt anymore, and as a barb it's pathetic. First on the list of things she expected the old woman to say. No originality to her cruelty. She takes 2 quick steps over to the table, glares at one of grandmother's underlings until she consents to get the hell out of her way and drops her folder, open at the appropriate page onto the table. At the top of the facing document, her name is spelled out in bold, Beatrice Quinn. I'll thank you to call me my name, B says, in my house. 2019, November 9th, Saturday. Grandmother left scars everywhere, not just on the walls of the hall and her other legacies that have been much harder to live with, impossible to cover with concrete. But even those fade with time. B hasn't felt the need to hide her back from her lovers for years, and Maria, who's always been sensitive, started wearing short-sleeved tops a few years ago. And even a swimsuit, once or twice, in Saint's expensively equipped swimming pool. Scars fade, memories remain and mingle with the outraged boys she left behind in the cell, screaming her name. B's second gin of the evening finds a home alongside the first. If you're going to drink, Maria says from the doorway, can you at least use a glass? It's more dignified. B hadn't noticed the door open, too absorbed in her own worries. A pattern lately. What's wrong with my mug? She says. She doesn't pay attention to the mugs, unless one of them has a particularly good joke on it. She certainly didn't think to look at what was printed on this one until when she grabbed it from the kitchen on her way up. She's not even sure who buys them, and in her more fanciful moments she might believe that no one does, that a house this large and this old just acquires them, like spiders. Maria raises an eyebrow, steps over to the desk and picks it up, holds it out wordlessly. It's printed with the text, "Never ask a man his salary, a woman her age, or an aunt what's in her basement." B laughs, at least partly because of Maria's silent exasperation, and her reward is for her senior sponsor to swipe the bottle off her desk and return it to the liquor cabinet in the corner. "Hey, I needed that," B says, half serious. "Really? How is it helping, exactly? It was telling me that the fate I just promised that boy is justified." Maria pours herself a single shot of vodka and necks it. He's not a boy, auntie. He's a man, and a rapist, and unrepentant. She wipes the glass with a cloth and sets it back in the cabinet. Cruel, violent, and a bad influence in the little squad he assembled down there. The world is better off without him. And who are we to decide that, Maria? You'd rather someone else took responsibility for him. I don't see a queue forming. Aaron called them the mean girls, by the way. I'm beginning to think everyone in that bloody basement is getting a little too self-aware. Mean Girls, like the movie. Yeah, but I don't think he or any of them have seen it. Correction, pretty sure Steph has, actually. The kid keeps locking eyes with me every time Aaron says it. She frowned. I suppose now we get to find out what the other two without the Regina George. "Oh, Maria," B says, scolding. It's a little too early to make jokes about Declan's absence. "That's me," Maria says, walking back to the desk and gently pushing B's chair back on its casters. "Come here, auntie." There's little choice but to accept the hug, and so she does, sinking into the girl's arms. No one here knows her like Maria. No one else can spot when the responsibility is getting to her. Admittedly, nobody else tends to see her drinking gin out of a novelty mug. "My beautiful Maria," she says, "are you okay? Has your supervisor stopped bothering you? Because you know you don't have to bother with this nonsense. We can increase your salary here." "Auntie," Maria says sharply, and punctuates her rebuke with a squeeze to B's ribs. "I'm fine. Just take the hug. You don't have to be in charge all the time, you know." "Fine," B says, hiding her smile and closing her eyes. Eventually, Maria releases her, sits her down, relaxes into the chair on the other side of the desk with a stretch and a moan of discharged discomfort. A long day for both of them. B glances at her phone and is starting to realize it's not even 8 in the evening yet. Considerably more days still to go. A cereal bar and a bottle of water appear suddenly on the desk in front of her, and when she looks up, Maria is dropping her bag onto the floor and swigging from a bottle of her own. B looks at the cereal bar. It has cartoon hazelnuts with faces and full sets of limbs on it. "Eat," Maria says. "You're sponsoring me," B says. "Stop sponsoring me. As soon as you stop wallowing in guilt." B unwraps the cereal bar and takes a bite. "Never," she says, through a mouthful of oats and nuts. 2004, August 8th, Sunday. Grandmother reacts predictably. What is the meaning of this, David? But B, distracted, can't stop staring at the thick age lines around her mouth, as if the woman spent so long contorting herself with a contempt that a sneer etched itself permanently onto her face. "David," Grandmother repeats, banging her mug on the table. "I told you to use my name." "Fine. Beatrice, what's the meaning of this?" B taps a finger on the folder, laid open on the table, sheafed papers spilling out. The meaning, I think you'll find, is spelled out quite clearly on pages 1 through 6 of this document. You can't take the whole away from me, Grandmother snaps, but undermines herself by leaning forward and snatching up the folder. She reads, flips through, and laughs bitterly. This is signed in a fake name. It can't be valid. My identity is watertight, I assure you. Nevertheless, she says, leafing through the papers, Dorley Hall is mine. Actually, it's the property of the Lambert family. Or it was. David, you can't... Beatrice, B snaps, opening a folder of the copies and turning it around to her name, clearly printed atop the first page. It's visible to everyone in the kitchen, including the line of girls standing nervous and confused against the far wall. My name is Beatrice. It's right there. You can read, can't you, Grandmother? One of the girls snorts and then quickly covers her mouth. Beatrice, Grandmother says, I don't know what you're trying to pull, but there is no way that any of this is legal. This stunt serves nothing more than to deliver you back into our hands. A mistake, by the way, in case you're wondering. She raises a thumb and middle finger, ready to snap. A gesture that would, 16 years ago, wordlessly require sponsors to step forward and restrain B, prepare her for punishment, but B's ready for this, and drops a hand into her bag as soon as Frankie stands. She holds it there for a second to make them worry about what kind of weapon she might have. Takes advantage of the hesitation to step back out of reach. She pulls out her phone, snaps it open with her finger, and hits the speed dial. When it picks up, she says 2 words. Your turn. Frankie, awkward and half out of her chair, looks at Grandmother, waiting for instruction, and Grandmother irritably waves a hand, sitting her down again. Wise. If B's bluffing, she's alone, and another few minutes of indulging her won't make a difference. And if B's not alone, and she did indeed summon a friend with her brief phone call, then it's best for Grandmother if she doesn't start a fight that she might lose. The thought of being taken is enough to revive the butterflies in B's belly, though, and she wonders briefly what the cells look like these days. Rumors waking for the first time looked up in one, naked, confused, castrated. She distracts herself by inspecting the line of girls standing ready against the wall. All but one of them confused and nervous. The one she's looking for stands at the end, an East Asian girl, trying and failing to hide her smirk. She also keeps her arms folded in an attempt to hide the marks. Some of them look quite recent and quite deep, and B wishes for a moment that she had come today for a massacre, not a coup. Maria, B says. Maria nods, takes a smart step forward, and crosses the room next to Aunt B. She's as beautiful as B imagined she would be. For all her perversions, Grandmother has a good eye and good surgeons, but the malicious, satisfied gleam in her eyes is a welcome surprise. B knows a fighter when she sees one. Nick, Grandmother gasps, how dare you step out of line? My name is Maria, you sadistic old hag. Fantasies. That's not your legal name, though, is it? Frankie says, sounding confused, as if recalling B's frequent excursions outside, wondering if Maria somehow left and filed a deed poll without anyone finding out. It's as legal as anything else under this roof, Maria says, and gives her the finger. B, inside her own head, gets out the pom-poms and starts cheering. You'll regret your insubordination, young man, Grandmother says. No, she won't, B says, and waves her folder. You don't run this place anymore. B turns, dismissing Grandmother, and says Maria, it's good to finally put a face to the voice. How have they been treating you? Appallingly, Maria says. One of the girls can't hold in her giggle, and wilts for a moment when Frankie glares at her, only to start up again straight away. How quickly authority crumbles when challenged. But that's nothing new. And your friends? Maria makes a show of surveying the girls. If B's information is accurate, most of them are younger than Maria. They certainly seem less confident. Several bear marks from recent physical punishments. Every one of them looks as if all of their holidays have come at once. They hurt us, Maria says, over and over, but they don't break us. She looks at Grandmother for the first time, blank, disinterested, as if examining an insect. And they never will. You will have a month in the dark for this, Nick, Grandmother spits. I don't think so. What have you been doing, Nick? Frankie says. I've been passing information to Beatrice, obviously. Wasn't that clear? What kind of information? Grandmother asks, noticeably paling. B extracts another folder from her bag. This one is considerably thicker and makes a satisfying thump when she drops it on the table. Everything we could possibly need, she says. 2019, November 9th, Saturday. How'd it go with Declan? Maria asks. They settled into something less like an intervention and more like one of their regular briefings. And Maria's leaning back in her chair, having wheeled it over to the side of her desk, kicked off her boots and put her feet up next to Bee's laptop, daring her to push her off, daring her to make her behave like an employee or a subordinate. But Maria, like Bee, has been at Dorley for more years than either of them bear to count, and formality doesn't last. The other girls who stayed on when Bee took over have all gone, one by one. Barbara, the old nurse, straying farther away every year until finally taking off for Canada, being the last. But Maria's the oldest, the most tied to this place. She was, in a sense, born here. She found her family here. She'll probably die here, just like Bee. And so they sit together in Bee's flat, connected by their experiences as much as their long association. They both live in the house of their abusers, still flinch occasionally at the ghosts around each corner, still find themselves incapable of leaving. Bee finishes her bottle of water. The way it always goes, she says. He gave me the big blah blah, strong man, weak woman speech. I chastised him for throwing away all his last chances. He called me a bitch. I told him when he could expect his last meal under our roof, and I left him to it. Last I heard from him, he was yelling and kicking the glass again. When did they come to pick him up? Monday. You'll keep everyone out of the cell corridor till then, of course. He was making a lot of noise, Bee presses. It could be distressing to the others if they know he's still... I'll look after it, Auntie. Of course she will. Bee couldn't ask for anyone better in her corner. Even though she's cheeky, even though she's sometimes almost too practical for her own good, even though she's the reason everyone calls her Aunt Bee, a nickname she found distasteful at first, grandmother's familial affectations were calculated to manipulate and discuss in equal measure, and the last thing Bee wanted to adopt for herself, but eventually grew to tolerate. You accept the name your family gives you. How's Pippa? Bee asks. She's fine. More than fine. She's ecstatic. A little smug, actually. She's been convinced since Steph got here that she'd been assigned a nice boy by mistake, with all of us trying to constantly persuade her otherwise. So she's delighted to find out that she was very nearly right all along. She told me to suck it, although she was smiling at the time, so I didn't take too much offense. She's planning to shout at you, though. Oh? And what have I done? You should hear it in her own words. Hold on a second. Maria fumbles with her phone for a moment. I have the recording right here. Recording? I suggested that it might not be the best time to pick a fight for you, but she still wanted to say her piece, so she waggles the phone. Evidence. Because of Declan. Am I so fragile? In the face of Pippa with a belly full of fire, fragility is not the issue. Ductility might be. Here we are. I hate the file system on these things. She sets the phone down on the table and taps a button on the screen. Pippa's voice, tinny over the speaker, says, Aunt Bee, it's Pippa. Hi. The pause is long enough just to spark a smile from both of them. Look, I'm grateful you're letting Steph say. I don't know what I have done if you'd done something drastic, but I'm glad I don't have to find out. Bee raises an eyebrow at Maria, who just grins at her. But, Pippa's voice continues, Aunt Bee, stay out of her way, would you? Are you sure you want to say it quite like that? Maria's voice says on the recording. Absolutely sure, Maria. Aunt Bee, I want you to know, whenever you listen to this, I'm honestly disgusted with you. Steph's had enough to deal with, what with losing Melissa and coming here and the nurse and that thing with the showers and me. Let's not forget me and all the awful things I said to her and all the awful things I let happen to her. And the last thing she needed was for you to start implying, no, actually, outright stating that she is somehow responsible for all that stuff. That she should feel guilty for giving me a bad time. That's not just cruel, Aunt Bee, although it is really, really cruel. That's setting us up against each other. And why would you... Maria taps the phone again, and Pippa goes silent. That goes on for a while. I get the gist, Bee says. You're frowning at me, Maria. The thing with Steph? Not your finest hour, Auntie. No, probably not. Bee says, pushing back in her chair and examining the ceiling so she didn't have to stare at Maria's face for the moment. The problem of Steph, which just a few hours ago had seemed so urgent, is now clear to her. The girl wants help with her transition and has a vested interest in keeping the secret of Dorley. For Melissa's sake, if no one else's, they help her, she helps them. Such an easy equation. But Bee has got too used to manipulating people. Show her someone simple, someone with straightforward and clearly stated needs, and she looks for the lies. Sod it, she says, sitting forward. Pippa gets what she wants. She gets full autonomy, and I'll stay out of the way. As long as they both stick to the rules, I won't stick my oar in. Sound good? Maria nods. Good. You'll keep an eye on them both, yes? Of course. We're not going to tell Melissa, I imagine. I don't think it would be a good idea, Maria says. Not yet, anyway. She was always very attached to Steph. Talked about her all the time. When we tell her we have the girl who was basically her little brother down in the basement being coerced into listening to Taylor Swift medleys, I want that to be in a controlled environment, like defusing a bomb. Maybe with Steph in the room or on WhatsApp or something, so Melissa can see she's okay and that she wants to be here. Strange to have someone using she pronouns after a month. Suppose we'll have to get used to a lot of firsts before the year is out. B laughs. Our first walk-in. You should know, Maria says, Steph prefers he for now, hence my pronoun confusion. Oh? It's this thing about not wanting to be a she until... God, I don't even fully understand it. And I've seen the video where she explained it to Pippa. Guilt, self-loathing, etc. Pippa's already decided she's having none of it. Something about showing the girl it's okay to be a girl. Good, Aunt B says. You've got to snip that type of silliness in the bud, and early. Had a lot of experience with trans women, do you? Enough to know that if you give them an inch, they'll steal 10 years from themselves. Well, Pippa's got a real bug up her ass about it, so she probably agrees with you. Maria brushes the back of her hand against her forehead as if warding off a headache. She had a whole thing up on the roof. I told her I'd defer to her judgment. It's almost as if she's trying to beat Vicky's record for the fastest self-claimed she pronoun. She giggles and says, in a voice that suggests that B would know what she's talking about, Awesome, girls done quick. I'm sure that's very funny, but I don't get the reference. It's a speed running joke. Speed running, as in like exercise? Where's Christine when you need her? The worst thing for B about surrounding herself with millennials and Zoomers is they'll be outright incomprehensible and then act as if she's terribly old and out of touch when she surreptitiously has to Google new terminology under the table. Actually, she says, putting the joke out of her mind. What about Christine? What did she say? She's thinking about it. Think she'll accept? She likes the idea of you paying her. Did you tell her the money comes from a trust? No, Maria says. I think it helps her to imagine it being dragged reluctantly from your pockets every month. I think the image will help her to accept. When did I become such an ogre, Maria? Somewhere around 2005, Auntie. Brat. Harridan. Tell me, why didn't we think of the letter thing before? The letter thing? The idea that Christine cooked up with Steph to pretend the girl in this case, has run off to soul search and make a nuisance of themselves on another country. Maria shrugs. We can't exactly use it often. Once every few years at most. More men fall drunkenly into freezing lakes than spontaneously go backpacking. Still, put it in the handbook. Save it for the ones with the close familiar relationships. A lever, Maria says, nodding. It's a risky maneuver, though. You've always said, and it's always been borne out by my observations, that they have to be completely removed from their old support networks, that the complete isolation is part of what makes it work. She has a way of repeating B's own instructions back to her, phrased to make them both sound like terrible people. I think, B says slowly, that hope can be similarly powerful. For the right boy, from time to time. Fair enough. Oh, and I thought we'd do the all hands tomorrow at lunch. Get the second year girls to cook, lure everyone in with a promise of free food and wine, and then hit him with the news just as they're getting sleepy. You're planning to tell the second years too? Yes. I wasn't going to send them away for a meal they just cooked. You don't think that will erode their trust in us? We locked up a genuine trans girl, closeted but fully aware and actively exploring our facilities, and it took us a month to notice. Maria counts on her fingers. 1, they'll find out sooner or later, and it's better to come from us and not rumor. 2, don't forget, the kids come in knowing more gender terminology than ever been coined back in my day. We just tell them she's both an egg and an idiot, and they'll understand. And 3, it was Christine who brought her in, and Christine who helped hide her from us, and the second years love Christine. They do? B laughs. They beat us to it then. Do you ever wonder if you're getting old and slow? No, Maria says, with so much certainty that she forces a smirk out of Maria. Admittedly, not a difficult thing to do. I'm as canny and alert as I ever was. Of course. Why do the second years love Christine so much? Remember the thing with Faye's sponsor and her inappropriate rage outs? It was Christine who calmed Faye down and Christine who brought the matter to you. Of course, B remembers. Maybe I am getting old. Hell, Christine even roped Paige into getting Faye all dressed up. Arguably helped actualize Faye's gender. Why isn't she a sponsor already? She'd never do it. Getting her to run our tech is hard enough of a sell. True. And it's good to see her becoming close with Paige again. Roping her into things, sitting together at breakfast. Close. Auntie, they're together. Really? Yes. Maria says, sounding wistful. Paige has been besotted with her since, I don't know, their first year maybe, and never stopped. But the difference this time is that Paige has learned how to ask for what she needs, and Christine's learned how to listen. Year by year, the girls become new, find themselves and find love. It makes it all worth it. That's genuinely wonderful, B says. It's disgustingly sweet, is what it is, Maria says, and B is reminded that Maria's been stepping out the evenings herself, discreetly, but not so quietly that an old busybody like B wouldn't notice eventually. And what about you? I've seen you a lot with Edie lately. How is she? Maria, as always, deflects. Disgustingly sweet. 2004, August 8th, Sunday. Bee's had a long time to perfect her womanhood, to understand it, to claim it and inhabit it, but Elle Lambert has a way of making her feel like an ingenue. Her heels announce her presence, crisply clicking on the flagstones outside, and by the time she reaches the kitchen doors, Barb, another of Maria's circle, who adopted the rather old-fashioned name Barbara with an enthusiasm entirely familiar to Bee, has already stepped smartly forward to let her in, as if she's royalty, and the abused girls of Dorley are her retinue. Elle steps elegantly through the door and smiles at the girl, inspiring in Barb a blush that Bee thinks could probably cook an egg, and hands her a shopping bag. Gifts for the girls, Elle says to her, and Barb rushes back to the women standing by the wall, who all look in equal parts delighted and scandalized. Thank you, ma'am, Barb says, and the other girls rifle through and pull out tops, skirts, shoes. She performs an exaggerated curtsy, which earns her a glare from Frankie, but no one else but B seems to notice. Please, call me Elle. Elle steps forward and deposits a portable hard drive on the kitchen table. She's shorter than B and the younger Dorley graduates, shorter even than grandmother and most of her people too. But she commands the room effortlessly, with a manner that belies her 25 years and which B, despite being over a decade her senior, has been trying to emulate since the day they met. She's pale and subtly made up, and for her rich, thick waves of dark hair break on her shoulders of a suit worth enough, in B's judgment, to feed a family of 4 for a year. The only woman in the room who doesn't look dowdy in comparison is Maria, who has today assembled with unexpected skill an elegant outfit from the meagre scraps allowed the girls. Grandmother's coterie, already given to a particularly English variety of rural tweed anti-fashion, look positively antique. Elle Lambert, she says, addressing the room. My grandmother was the guardian of the family holdings, and with her death that responsibility has passed to me. My first action upon reviewing the portfolio was to note that this house, Dorley Hall, has been severely underutilized, and the decision was taken to transfer the deeds to a newly formed Dorley Hall Foundation, of which Beatrice Quinn is the sole trustee and administrator, though she will naturally be free to hire her own staff. Maria, Barbara, B says on cue, welcome aboard. Thank you, Beatrice. Yes, thank you, Beatrice, Barb says after a nudge from Maria. I'm not leaving, grandmother says. I have assurances from... Elle forces grandmother back into silence by clearing her throat. Yes, we all know about your assurances. Only one remains. Insufficient for you to retain control, but enough to permit you to retire with some dignity. That's not... I represent 64% of your current... my mistake. Your former funding, which as of this morning is no longer available to you. Account access revoked, credit lines withdrawn, etc., etc. And the majority of your other benefactors were most displeased upon reviewing the portions of the information you vouchsafed to us by our contacts. Elle leans on the table, palms flat. You've been very selective with the truth, haven't you, Dorothy? Grandmother shrugs. Say what you came here to say. Only the Smith-Farrow grant is still available to you, Elle says, standing upright again. For the time being. Per Smith-Farrow's request, you will be allowed to retain your flat on the premises and act like a consultant during the administrative transfer. Your influence over day-to-day operations will be limited, obviously, but your valuable experience may, of course, prove useful to the new custodian. Elle's dismissive hand wave is intended to suggest that this constitutes a triviality of business that she, the money, does not care about. In fact, the Smith-Farrow grant represents their one failure. Had they convinced the old bastard to withdraw his support, then grandmother would be out in her ear by tomorrow, but their intelligence going in had been incomplete. They'd thought him another clueless aristocrat, but the man knew everything that went on under Dorley. He even played them videos of his favourite cruelties and looked upon Bea with a hunger that made her want to climb out of her own skin. He dismissed their legal threats. I'm too old to care. By the time you scale the mountains my lawyers will erect in front of you, I'll be in the ground. And he's too well protected for Elle's other measures to stand a chance. In the end, the best they could do was tie up his grant renewal with red tape and thus restrict his lease on the flat on the first floor to the 2 years remaining. He still complained, vowed to fight them. Grandmother shipped him many playthings over the decades, and his gratitude is much owed. Bea wondered aloud to Elle, when they were safely away from his mansion, how many of her other sisters were buried there. Elle brushes her palms together, as if removing a few specks of bothersome dust. The Lambert family and our considerable holdings will be providing the Dorley Hall Foundation with a yearly grant to be administered by Beatrice Quinn and her staff. Dorley Hall will be operated as a dormitory for exceptional but disadvantaged young women who might otherwise miss their chance at an education at this first-rate college. Your people will leave, ours will replace them. You will be free, Dorothy, to sulk in your flat for the 2 years left in the lease. And that, she smiles pleasantly at grandmother, is that. Grandmother glares back, fists stiffening on the table, and for a moment Bea wonders if she's going to go for it, throw everything she has at them, which would be interesting considering the 4 armed men from Elle's organization who have been waiting outside for such an eventuality. But instead, she stretches her fingers, unclenches her jaw, and says with a growl, You can't do this. I don't care how much money you control. I know people. You know people? I am people, Elle says. And not only do I know everyone you know, I'm one of them. And you're just a wannabe. A tweed torturer carrying out petty brutality in your sad little castle. They respect me, whereas for even the few who accept your tawdry products, they laugh at you behind your back. And I also, she points at the hard drive, which has been sitting on the table like an unexploded bomb, have that. Review it, and the paper summary provided by Beatrice at your leisure. We don't just have your names and your financial records, Dorothy, we have the photographs, we have video, we have your phone conversations and text messages and emails, we have some of the bones, Dorothy. We have enough evidence to put you away for lies. We could splash your face across the front page of every newspaper worldwide, and we know some of the well-connected families who are grieving mysterious disappearances who would likely be minded to ensure your stay in prison after your international humiliation is a short one, and that goes for all of you. She sweeps her hand around the kitchen, taking in the rapt glares of a half-dozen sponsors. There is not a one of you whose life I cannot comprehensively destroy. Then why don't you? One of them snaps. Bea recognizes the nurse, Karen, from Maria's files and forces herself not to shudder. She's read all about that woman's proclivities. Seems a worthy successor to the sadistic medical examiner from Bea's time. Because that is our bargain, Elle says. You are free to leave, return to your lives, or squat in your flat on the premises until the lease expires if that is what you prefer, and you never breathe a word about Dorley Hall to anyone outside these walls, and you will die old and free. But if just one of you makes a move against us, she taps a nail on the hard drive. You still haven't explained why, grandmother says. Elle steps back and places herself by Bea's side, brushes her back of her hand against Bea's. Encouragement. Because we're reforming Dorley, Bea says. Under your hand, it's a charnel house. You torture men because you find it erotically appealing. You change them, humiliate them, exercise your vile pleasures on their bodies, and when they're done, you spit them out. You deserved it, Frankie hisses. You're a criminal. I was a shoplifter, and the criminality was just an excuse to waste people. But we have a different idea. You hurt men for fun. She looks from Elle to Maria, then back to grandmother. We're going to save them. 2019, November 9th, Saturday. They never meet in Armsworth, a deliberate choice. It's best that nobody knows that they're still in such intimate contact. No one except Maria, who handed Bea her bag and told her, with every appearance of innocence, to have fun. So it's always a hotel in a different city every time, because Elle is Elle, it's always an expensive hotel. Dorley Hall is, more than anything else, comfortable, wearing its relative wealth in its fittings and fixtures that have become worn and scuffed, but never actually broken, despite years and years of often tempestuous new girls using, abusing, and sometimes colliding with them. Stepping into Elle's life for a night is an amusing reminder that other people, a select few, other people, granted, are never far from someone who will call them ma'am without smirking. There's a Lambert family estate somewhere in the country, and various apartments in various cities worldwide, but Elle lives mostly out of hotels, which means Bea, when she wants to see her, has to call for a car and be delivered. At least it's relatively close tonight. Sometimes there's plane travel involved. Beatrice, Elle calls, standing up from her seat at the bar and beckoning her over. She's wearing a loose jacket over something dark and layered, which billows interestingly around her body when she moves and reveals itself to be in two pieces when she raises her arms for a hug and exposes her taut belly. It's been too long. Bea accepts the embrace when it comes, breathes in her scent and the memories it provokes, and leans back for a kiss, cheek to cheek. Elle, she says, I missed you. What she missed, Elle says, sitting back down and making certain hand gestures at the bartender, which almost immediately result in fresh drinks being deposited, is my 40th. I'm certain I invited you. Apologies. There's been so much going on. Relax. Elle places a calming hand on Bea's and leaves it there, fingers nodding carefully around her fingers. I'm teasing. It was boring. You would have hated it. You're probably right, Bea says, sampling her drink with the hand that Elle hasn't trapped. I would quite like to make it up to you anyway, if you'll let me. I look forward to it, Elle says, releasing her. Have you eaten? Nothing especially satisfying. After dinner, then. A few minutes later, they're being seated at what is undoubtedly the hotel's costliest and most exclusive restaurant. Elle orders a bottle of wine for the table, with the detached but knowledgeable air of someone who does this all the time, and Bea looks over the menu for something light, preferably with mushrooms. So, Elle says, when they're alone in their candlelit corner, how's life in Armsworth, the tall girl capital of Great Britain? Quiet, until recently. And how are the girls? Unruly, as always. How's your girl? Self-denying, as always. Bea smiles. God, she says, look at you. Elle places a manicured hand on her chest. Look at me. What did I do? Aged better than I have. Ridiculous. Those little lines around your eyes rather suit you. That's very kind of you to say. How's the world of high finance and international intrigue? Dreadfully dull and rather annoying. At least in your line of work, when someone gets a smart mouth in them, you can know. She makes a snip-snip gesture. We usually reserve that for the ones with the attitude problem when it goes somewhat beyond rudeness, Bea says, grinning. The waiter returns, pours wine, takes orders, collects menus, and glides away, leaving them alone once more and giving Bea the opportunity to drink in both the wine and the moment. Elle really has aged magnificently. If Bea didn't know better, she'd swear she looks the same at 40 as she did at 25, and she's retained her aptitude for rendering Bea fumbling and adolescent in her presence. Tell me about this girl, Elle says. The one who just showed up one day and got your whole house in a frenzy. Oh, yes, Bea says. Steph, the subject of my every other conversation lately. She gives her the short version, which takes her long enough for her stuffed mushrooms to arrive and partially disappear. Throughout the tale, Elle looks on, fascinated, indulgent, offering comments here and there, but content for the most part to let Bea talk. She asks to see a picture. Bea has one. From Steph's first lunch downstairs. The girl is enduring Aaron Holt, looking skeptically at a veggie burger, eyebrows raised in the forehead that will require, despite her insistence otherwise, minimal alteration. Even in such unflattering lighting, her potential is clear. They're friends now, actually. B says when she hands the phone back. Her and that little flasher boy. Can see why. He's sort of cute. She's trying to reform him. Do you think she'll succeed? No, B says and rolls her eyes at the face that L pulls. I have to say that, don't I? If she manages it, it calls our whole operation into question. Not from just one boy, L says, as long as she stops at just one. L chews thoughtfully on the last bite of her omelette. I'd like to meet her. Not now, of course. I'm sure she's already got enough on her plate without me barging in just to satisfy my professional curiosity. But later, when she's ready, I'd like to meet her. And do send me a photo every so often, won't you? You know how I love seeing them bloom. They referred to small talk, the upkeep of the hall, saints gossip, complaints about some duke or lord or something. L doesn't know which and doesn't care. Who thinks L can cure him of bachelorhood? Neither of them raised the elephant in the room until dessert. I'm concerned about grandmother, B says. I think she's going to try something. L nods. I concur. Thank you for dealing with the nurse, by the way. Beyond my pleasure, L says. People like her give me indigestion. I think she was a shot across the bows, B says. L raises her eyebrow, so B continues. I think grandmother persuaded the nurse to disregard her obligations. A little reminder, I'm still out here and I'm still watching you. I imagine Karen was only too eager to agree. Bet she jumped at the chance to have a little old-time fun with the residents. I suspect grandmother either downplayed the consequences for her or overestimated her own hand. Do you think Dorothy will leave it at that when she's made to understand what happened to the nurse? I love to believe she'll go gentle into that good night, but you know her better than I. Honestly, I don't know. B chews thoughtfully on her cheesecake. It is distractingly excellent. If she's dying, we can't rule out her pulling the ripcord and taking us down with her. Flooding the internet with information or sending it to the papers. You know what the bloody climate is like in this country right now? Having what we do exposed, it'd be like turf Christmas, and she knows it. That bloody Frost woman will burst a blood vessel from excitement, and going to prison will be traumatic enough without having to see her smugly pontificating on breakfast TV. Exposing us, exposes all of her associates too, Elle says. She doesn't care for them much, judging by her stunt with a nurse. I think she'd happily see them all jailed or dead or bloody dismembered if it means seeing us suffer too. Elle nods. I'll put someone on it. A full investigation. She's got to be reaching the end of her funds by now and all her old patrons are long dead. We might even be able to... Magnificent, thank you. B manages not to be startled by the sudden waiter and mumbles something to support L's effusive praise of the food, the service, the decor, the ambience. L gives her a significant look and another nod, which B reads as confirmation that she will have one of her mysterious people, the same people who made Nurse Karen Turner disappear, attempt a similar trick on grandmother, and the subject does not come up again. At L's door, the elevator leading to the penthouse suite, naturally, B fights against the temptation and, as always, loses. So when the doors open and B doesn't step away, L nods, drags her by the lapel of her blouse into the lift and presses the appropriate button with an elbow. Because as soon as the doors close, she needs all hands available to start removing B's clothes. Backwards, they stagger into L's room, B's top layer already discarded, her bra already unclasped. She intercepts Elle as she reaches for her skirt, splays their fingers together and redirects her hands, pushing upwards, using her height to her advantage, controlling her with one hand and reaching with the other to knock Elle's jacket off her other shoulder, trapping her in the fabric. Elle grins and rolls her shoulders, freeing herself from B's grip and shrugging off the jacket, letting it fall where it may as they keep stepping backwards together. The lamps are automatically lighting themselves as they move around the suite, illuminating Elle from below, sharpening her features and making her grim seem demonic as she takes control again, slipping her hands inside B's skirt and pushing it down, causing them both to trip, landing, laughing shoulder to shoulder, on the bed and in the middle of the suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows surround them on three sides, and the skylight spans half the ceiling above them, and for a moment B feels the old terror of being seen, of being discovered, compromised, and near naked and deserving of punishment. before she realizes that the building is the tallest one around. The only thing watching them are the stars. Elle, still mostly clothed, lunges for her, and B grabs her instead, runs her fingers up her arms to her top, lifts it over her head in one movement, and then finally, they're almost equal. Elle relents, kisses her quickly on the lips, and stands to drop her skirt to the ground and step out of her boots. B rolls onto her back, looks up at her, resplendent, half in lamplight, half in moonlight. Elle matches her appreciative smile and steps back once more, the better to give B a view as she reaches behind herself and unhooks her bra. The bed is in a small, stepped depression, the centerpiece of the room, so when B stands up from the bed and reaches forward to embrace her, to push her back up and up another step, their faces are near level, a novelty and clearly a delight to Elle, who laughs and throws her arms around B's neck, leaning forward to close the space between them as B puts one leg up on the bottom step, ready to steady Elle and to anchor herself. Elle's fingers dance across B's back, around her waist, across her belly, and then she pulls closer, dives her fingers into B's underwear and begins to slowly massage her, assaulting her equilibrium with every slow pulse until she falls back again, back onto the mattress, and Elle falls with her. "You're glorious, Beatrice," Elle breathes, twitching her fingers, coaxing from B a moan that ends only when she kisses her. B, caught in the rhythm, begins moving her hips in time until the pressure that starts at Elle's fingers and ends at the tip of every nerve is provided by both of them, as one, a single organism with a single purpose. Elle kisses her again, finding her collarbone, her neck, her jaw, her chin, her mouth. When B opens her eyes, her memory returns. The memory of her first kiss, back before when she was free, under a different night sky, in a place that no longer exists, as a person who no longer exists. And she revels in it, exults in it, and laughs against Elle's lips. Simply irresistible, B whispers, a 30-year-old echo, and kisses her harder still. End of chapter 15.